For a series that seems simple in theory, one of the most interesting characterizations is when a character takes on a personality that breaks a lot of preconceptions about their archetype. Alan Becker's stick figure series has a lot of instances where characterization in combat leads into their creativity or brutality in dealing with a situation, and oftentimes, their personality is hidden well within the intricacies of their fighting style. And today, we're about to see a character that, on the surface, seems like your run-of-the-mill brute force and punch-heavy fighter, but is actually a character with a heart of gold and a lot more strategic than he's given credit for. Welcome to How Strong Are Alan Becker's Stick Figures, a series dedicated to analyzing a character's fighting style, tactics, skills, and combat movesets and mentalities to observe patterns that show and improve their personal characterization. What are they good at? What tools do they use? What makes them unique from others? And most importantly, what tricks do they have up their sleeves? Today, we're talking about Red, the animal-loving, impressionable, ride-or-die, kick-punch comboist of the Color Gang. Disclaimer: this isn't your average power scaling style of video where I'm taking in strength in isolation, and I also won't be putting numbers for the sake of proving superiority amongst characters. It's a dissection, where I'm using the scenes and the context of their personality to better understand why they fight a certain way. Also, it's not completely power that I'm after either. It's appreciating what that character can do and which aspect of their story is best reflected in their combat arsenal. So, let's begin. Red's fighting style is a front-loaded martial arts-like style that relies on multiple kicks and punches to deliver devastating blows. Red's style has sharp movements and dodges that include fast but short contacted kicks and punches. When he does a sequence of an attack, he doesn't interrupt that sequence with additional full-body movement, but he increases the number of blows in the sequence. He's the most balanced out of all of the sticks when it comes to preference in punching and kicking. Red's biggest utility is that his fighting style is volatile and versatile. Red's able to shift between upper body and then lower body fighting styles much faster than the others, and he is the one that usually interweaves punches and kicks with each other instead of having the bigger preference. If you can't read the chain of his attacks, then you're at a disadvantage. Here's one example in Animation vs. Animator 9. When he catches Blue's punch with a high guard, Red ducks down and tries to go for an uppercut. But when Blue catches that punch, Red doesn't hesitate to use his feet to kick him. Red, out of all of the sticks, is what I consider the best in utilizing his full body as a hitting item rather than just his movement. Red isn't afraid of throwing his entire body at an enemy if it meant getting them as far away from his friends as possible. Let's look at the sequence against the glitched green. Red does a total of 13 attacks on the glitched green with a total of 4 kicks and 9 punches. I've introduced previously in How Strong Is Green the concept of micro-movements, meaning there's smaller interweaving movements in between a bigger sequence of actions. In Green's case, this made his transition time between stances much smoother. But for Red, micro-movements are seen in the way that he keeps the stance consistent, because the limb that he uses does half strikes in between, or he shortens the contact time between his fist or his legs with the enemy's body. For example, when Red kicks, he doesn't alter his actual body's angle and stance much, but he does bend his kicks more. Defensively, Red is proficient in both blocking and dodging, depending on how he perceives the situation. Blocking is reserved for when he tends to stay in the offensive position, such as waiting for counterattacks or opportunities to keep himself close to an enemy. Dodging, on the other hand, is meant for either escaping or distance building, or if he wants to utilize his kicks more than his fists. Conversely though, Red is a poor matchup against enemies that outclass his level of volatility. Either they're also much more spontaneous that Red is forced to take on a much restrained approach, or they're reactive enough that they can capitalize on Red's movements being looser. It's also observable though that Red doesn't have the strongest resistance to stagger or a counterforce coming his way and knocking him over. And one of the ways to actually beat him up is to stagger him before he can do a full combo. Now here's an important distinction. There's a difference between being force resistant versus being strong. Force resistance has more to do with opposing knockback forces that could interrupt you. This is actually the case for Purple. However, Red's good at breaking out of holds that are inflicted by multiple weights, such as in Cave Spider Roller Coaster and the Influencer arc. Interestingly enough though, Red's the one that always has to deal with mobs jumping on him the most, like in Lush Caves and Monster School. Knocking him out is actually what Orange did against him when they fought in AVA4, and what Purple does in AVM25 to stop Red from locking him into another fistfight. Additionally, this is also what Green does, but just on a reactive way. Red has the momentum, but he doesn't have the connect. That isn't to say that Red is weak though, but it is interesting to see flaws in someone's fighting style be shown this way. When he's committed to attacking, he doesn't maneuver in a way that anticipates counterattacks, because his goal is to overwhelm you as much as possible before you can even think of doing anything. This is what leaves him open to interruptions. Additionally, one of Red's stranger maneuvers is just how frequently he's thrown around by his teammates. Like, the amount of combos that he has with others where he has to be the human bullet is fascinating. Yellow helps him out in the shaft, Blue throws him in Cave Spider Roller Coaster, then again in Med Wars, Green throws him back in Cave Spider Roller Coaster, and even in this episode, Orange uses him as a platform. But when I say volatile and versatile, I don't just mean how he throws hands. Out of all of the sticks, Red is one of those people that you can get stuck with in a room and fear that he'll start grabbing a comb and grate your eyes out. Because one of the most underappreciated aspects of Red's combat qualities, in my opinion, is how strategic he is. Red manifests his combat volatility in 3 ways. Let's start with terrain manipulation. Red is an expert in observing which elements of the environment are interactable and can be utilized to his advantage. Some examples of this are when he had the awareness to log the giant glitch Green out before it could do damage, him noticing the chef's cookbook while the others are busy fighting, and being the first one to notice whenever someone's doing something or something is mildly suspicious. Red is also an expert in using the environment's mechanics to his advantage, best exemplified in Animation vs Minecraft 31, where he makes himself go faster by using a shovel to propel the minecart. He swims in the water, and he notices that Green and Orange are fighting and tries to make a run for it by getting ahead of him. Red's tactician side also comes out when he has to use items to his advantage. We also see that Red is efficient when he is executing his plans. In the prank, he's able to create elaborate tricks with redstone, spring traps, entire labyrinths, and even just the simpler surprises. On a more serious note though, Red's instinct whenever he's alone is to try and interact with the environment as much as he can. Against Ballista, his first tactic is to try blind luck and escape through the doors, and to even use the doors and a vent as his only guard in an empty hallway. In Redstone Academy, we see that his thought processes are actually simplistically practical compared to the others who enjoy adding a bit more flair. Red is a very straightforward thinker, for better or for worse. Oh, you want something that says cat? Sure, have a cat. Oh, you want a robot? Here, an iron golem. And speaking of mobs, Red is an expert in knowing the features of what a mob can do and where to best utilize them. This includes using a chicken to slow others down in Ultimate Minecart, using a pig to sniff Blue out, riding on a bee to create flight, and spawning a lot of rabbits to incapacitate the Ender Dragon. Red also goes for the mob summoning option first when he has the option to do so, like summoning a ghast for flight, using parrots to scare his friends, summoning an iron golem to punch his friends, summoning snow golems to pelt his friends. Anyway, Red's mob expertise also includes his love of experimenting with different animals and spawns to see what can happen, not really questioning if he should. However, Red's mob expertise also bleeds further to his actual characterization of empathy. Even in situations where they have been douchebags to him, he's still willing to try and negotiate for peace if it's not favorable for him to fight, and if he thinks he needs their help, or if he thinks that they need his help. But this is a How Strongest video, and I want to point out how Red's empathy is also a really good asset on the field. Red's empathy also strangely manifests in how good he is at utilizing other people's more emotional or personality-based characteristics. In the same vein that he can express kindness, he's also good at evoking the stronger emotions in order to get his plans to work. Conversely, he's also good at reading other people's emotions and disengaging when needed, just like when he realized that Orange may or may not genuinely be seeing black and ready to kill him. He also capitalized on the others in parkour fighting each other and being reckless, and was able to secure his wins by reading the emotional situation of his friends. On a lighter note, this shows well when he read what kind of tactics would work best on the sticks to get them to lower their guards for a cake. Orange for relaxation, yellow with curiosity and redstone, blue with chilling and food, and green with adventure and diamonds. Even when he fails to prank Green, he goes to Purple, who also capitalizes on other people's emotions to get away with the plan. Subsequently, he doesn't show hostility against the Silverfish when they trash Green's performance, and even tries to convince Green that maybe peace is a better option considering that the Silverfish did want peace beforehand. But on a more practical example, Red's empathy extends to how intelligently he was able to help the mobs in the final leg of Monster School. But what makes Red's style different? Red's manner of strategy is what I like to call the optimization of simplicity. If I were to make an analogy, Red's style is actually very similar to how you play chess. The fundamentals of chess are super simple on paper. Pieces move on a specific way, and that's all they can do. The entire environment is seen by you and your opponent, and the movement of the pieces are straightforward information that you and your opponent have access to. This isn't like code names or games of the general or battleship where you have to also get more information. It's not a matter of who knows more and how good are you at hiding information. However, it is a matter of who understands the fundamentals of the board's positioning and what each piece can do the best, and understand how you can utilize them despite not really changing much about their core nature. Red's style of thinking is like that. He's simple, and it's in that simplicity that doesn't overcomplicate things that make him a great strategist, because his processes are linearly effective and straight to the point. I'd also like to argue that this is probably why his builds are pretty basic and build battle. He's just not really the kind of person that has all the need for the aesthetics. If it works, and if it works good, then it's about to work even better. In the hands of a farmer, for example, a watermelon is food and a bowl is a basin. To Red, it's a small blunt projectile that I'm about to throw at an enemy. To others, a boat is for water, but to Red, what's important about a boat is that it has a flat surface underneath that would help him slide across slippery surfaces. Even something as basic as a power extension can be weaponized because it has a cord which can be attached to something, and it's gonna hurt if he bashes your head in with it. You find solutions that look simple, but actually requires you to accept that item for what it is rather than what it could be. This is the difference between Yellow and Red's style of thinking. Yellow enjoys looking for the complexity in the basic things, like how he was given the command block and how he wants to go beyond the limitations for the sake of learning as much about that thing as possible. He enjoys processes and knowing how something works than absolutely going bonkers with it, leading to more creative strategies that involve complex systems. The Nether Short is a great contrast to their style of thinking. Red is simple and just wants to sleep. But while he's impulsive, it also stands to reason that he knows he'll just respawn again and doesn't mind the walk back. Yellow, on the other hand, hyper-focuses on the fact that Red would die if he went to bed. But Yellow misses the core of the problem anyway. Red can't progress because he's too tired. That's why in the end, even though Red did blow up, Red was feeling pretty happy with himself because his plan did work and he respawned completely rejuvenated. That isn't to say that Red isn't completely bonkers, by the way. Red's strategies are a byproduct of his immense curiosity and sometimes an ability to control his stronger impulses of getting what he wants by any means necessary. However, physicality isn't the only part of a character's combat capabilities. It also stands that the context, mentalities, and attitudes that they adopt during combat complement or even limit or enable their physical feats. Which is why we move on to combat mentality. How does a character think during combat? This section is segmented into 3 parts. First is initiative, which is how they start combat, engagement, what they do during combat, and de-escalation is how they make combat stop. Let's start with combat initiative. Red's combat initiative is surprisingly conditional despite his more enthusiastic personality. First, it depends on who he's with. Much like Blue, Red's style of combat is highly dependent on if he's with allies that he trusts with or if he's alone. However, it's not adrenaline that's trigger, but the level of restraint that he takes in his fighting style. When Red's with the Color Gang, his biggest priority is protecting others. Red will not instigate fights and is actually one of the more pacifistic sticks unless specifically provoked. Red, though, will escalate a situation if he thinks it's for the better intentions of the group. When Red fights in AVA-10, it wasn't just because he was looking for a fight, but it's for the sake of saving Orange. When Red begins the altercation with the chef, it was because he wanted the book for the group. Strangely enough, when it comes to the Color Gang and actually starting fights, It's quite the contrary. Moreover, he will unquestionably join combat if the other sticks start escalating it on their own. Whenever they fight, he only becomes aggressive when the others give the go signal by bombing him. In AVA 9, Blue instigates the PvP, and in AVA 4, he dives in after everyone's already fighting. Even in Lush Caves, Orange escalates the situation by insulting him and shoving him. Red has a very adaptive mentality depending on the support system around him. Red is also very reckless if he fails to see the gravity of a situation immediately. One example is him almost getting carried away by punching Green in hardcore mode because he's already used to them PvPing for fun. But when Red's alone, and especially when his senses are heightened, he's actually not the type to rush in. Actually, he's more likely to disengage and take a more analytical approach if he thinks that he can't win on his own. That's not to say he's weak, but more so that he's smart enough to know how to choose his battles. In Monster School, we see that even when he's getting bullied, he doesn't try to retaliate and presumably make the situation worse. One, because he's a good person, and second is because he's in unfamiliar territory. Going back to Animation vs Minecraft Season 3 in real time, we get to see a full fight scene with Red and his piglin. At first, we see him try to disengage as fast as possible, but consistently throughout this entire fight, Red's goal is just to escape instead of having a prolonged battle. The only reason that he's still stuck in here is because he was just much slower than someone like Green and Blue. Then we move on to combat engagement. Whenever Red is with his friends, Red adopts the community mentality of quality in quantity. Much like his love for his animals, he also becomes more invigorated when he has friends by his side. So much more so to the point of accidentally being reckless and running in alone. It's almost as if his friends are a kind of mental safety net that enable him to take on a more direct combat. Red will also never back down if he's already in a fight, and most especially if he has to protect someone else. Red will keep fighting if it means doing what's right. I have to go in, because if I don't, who will protect my friends? Red is very much more willing to throw himself in danger before throwing others in danger. One example of this is in Bed Wars, where Red sacrifices himself to fend off the players so that Blue can cover more distance with the bow. He's also not opposed to running forward in the face of danger. The higher the danger levels of the situation for someone else, the more likely Red will sacrifice himself, or the more likely that Red will keep fighting throughout the very end. When he is alone, however, Red will not hesitate to retreat if he thinks that the situation is unfavorable, or if he thinks that the situation is already distracting him from his goal. Red will never be the kind of person that would hurt someone once they've shown remorse or defeat. Red will also not hesitate to try and talk down an opponent if the opponent does show signs of restraint. That's just kind of how he is, you know? For the frame-by-frame analysis, I won't be doing a literal frame-by-frame because Red's fight scenes are much slower compared to Blue's and Green's that have a lot of micro-movements hidden in between. For Red, what's in his combat style is the sequence itself. Let's look at his fight with Orange. This is a rather brutish fight compared to Red's other styles. This one, in my opinion, is the rawest fight he's been in because this is the only fight in the series that's not only a PvP between sticks, but also set in an environment where the emotional tensions are dangerously high. There's not an ounce here of camaraderie and we can do this, and more so that I really hate when I want to bash your head in with my foot. The fight starts with the both of them trying to shove each other down until Orange headbutts him. Red stumbles back but he's able to catch himself. Red is on the offensive and engages in a fistfight. Red shifts his style from upper body to lower body though and catches Orange off guard by kneeing him in the stomach. This lets Red shove Orange down before grabbing him and tossing him to the side. Red attempts to get the upper hand by throwing his hands forward, anticipating Orange's block. Red uses this mistake to jump, using Orange as his own anchor, and kick him in the stomach as a human bullet. Red recovers immediately and catches Orange's foot mid-kick, then a punch, and the two start sharing blows. Red reads a good punch from Orange by ducking down similar to what he did to Blue before. Then Red lunges at Orange and shoves him down. Orange bashes heads Red in, but Red's not letting go. Orange tries to break free from this though, and Red's pushing back but slowly losing his grip. Instead, Red lets go and Orange tumbles from the lost support. Red starts punching him but he's wide open as Orange kicks him off of him with a foul swoop. Red doesn't balance fast enough as Orange bull rams and the two go tumbling. Red's thrown to two desert zombies. They close the distance and continue their fistfight. At first, they start trading equal blows, and when it seems like Red finally has the upper hand, he's grabbed by the leg and tossed yet again to the other side. Red hops on top of a spider and launches himself again at Orange, except Orange is having none of this and throws him overhead and body slams him into a spider. Red rolls away as Orange nearly stabs him with a skeleton arrow. Whoa, that's brutal. Then Red dodges out of another arrow from Orange. Red grabs the arrow from the skeleton's head. Red lunges for Orange for the third time, but Orange already knows this and he immediately grabs him. What I like about this fight is that it shows the subtle ways that you can win against Red. Orange struggles the first time when Red dives for him, but come the second and third time that Red uses the same tactic, Orange already adapts. Additionally, against a fighter like Orange that's very upper body heavy anyway and has equally faster combos, Red's biggest timer is his stamina and knockback resistance. However, it's never to say that Red's weak. Red holds his own really well against Orange here, all things considered, and the amount of blows that they share in the fight is generally equal until Red decides to disengage. Overall, I really like Red's combat fighting style because it showcases a great balance between risk and reward. Characters like Green are nerfed because of the world around them, so most of his folly is circumstantial. Blue is nerfed by his level of adrenaline, so seeing him go all out is also its own treat. But Red's unique combat identity is something much more present in real-life fighting. Red's not afraid to do whatever it takes to win and using whatever it takes to win. My name is Mushi and this has been How Strong is Red? If you'd like to see more of the series, feel free to subscribe. The next one is about to be Yellow, which is equally very difficult to dissect, I'll be honest with you. Anyway, that's it for today.